My sincere thanks to the MBA program administration for this opportunity to interact with the young minds of Giridipam MBA on the topic of industry expectations from new age managers. I wish we had this opportunity to have this conversation in person, but unfortunately, I just traveled back from US last week and I was working in US till last week. I basically came to Kerala to take on this new role with the government of Kerala. So currently I am homebound due to quarantine restrictions and unable to join you in person. So I just want to take an administrative disclaimer as we get into this conversation. Um, the road in front of my house is being tarred. So I'm home quarantining and the road in front of my house is being tarred. Apparently the Public Works Department chose this auspicious day and hour to start the tarring activity, which has been much awaited. So I hope it is not too much of distraction, but if you hear some background noise of heavy equipment going back and forth, it is that. And apologies for that as well. I truly appreciate the generous introduction that the lady, the student representative gave us. However, I would like to humbly remind you that I come before this audience primarily as an alumnus of Giridipam, as someone who walked the roads that you are walking today, as somebody who negotiated the same corridors that you are negotiating today, that of the Giridipam Pathani institutions, albeit a couple of decades ago. Hopefully, I'll be able to share a thing or two of value that would influence your thinking as you embark your own professional journeys. First, few words on this institution that is so near and dear to me. Giridipam group of educational institutions run under the guidance and supervision of Bethany Fathers has long been a proud presence, a beacon of knowledge in the educational landscape of Kottayam. Starting its journey from the humble beginnings in 1976, the undying dedication of the Bethany priests, along with hundreds of teachers and non-teachers, and the thousands of students that have built this institution one brick at a time, an institution of utmost quality. I also want to take this opportunity to remember and recognize the many teachers who have played a pivotal part in shaping me, my character, my values, and work ethics. Many of them have left this world for their heavenly abode, but their ideas, the words, and the wisdoms and the values they share with us live through thousands of us alums who are serving meritoriously in varied walks of life. Preparing for this conversation, I had asked Father Justin what proportion of the students came with any prior pre-MBA experience. I was duly informed that majority of the class, probably around 90% of the class, come with no prior experience. Actually, that works to our advantage in a topic like this. I think this particular topic especially, is more helpful and can make more of a positive impact in the freshest minds of a young graduate. Many of the things that I'm going to address here are as applicable to any profession, even day-to-day life, as it is to fresh MBAs. So it is not just a professional conversation, it is also a personal conversation. Actually, I want to start this conversation by making it very clear that very few of you, maybe none of you, will be directly entering your careers as professional managers, especially right out of the MBA program. I'm saying this not to dampen your enthusiasm, but to give you a touch of reality rather. Think of your MBA not as a point of arrival, not as a price in itself, but as something like a passport which gives you entry to a whole wide world of opportunities. Whether your MBA will eventually make you a manager, a senior manager, or a senior leader, will entirely depend upon the dedication, the commitment, and the hard work that you are willing to put towards each of your individual careers. What I would share with you today are a few principles that could potentially make a huge impact on what you can make out of your careers. We will start this conversation as we are doing with my comments on the topic, and I will soon open it up for a Q&A style interaction. And when we do Q&A, I would actually request people to come out of the mic, come out closer to the mic so that I can hear you pretty well as well. There are a lot of ideas that come to mind regarding industry expectations and realities that await new graduates. However, for the purposes of this conversation, I would like to discuss just 3 guiding principles that I think are most important or are foundational to many of the other things that are relevant to your careers as well. They also happen to be closely interrelated, so it is easier to remember it that way. I will break the suspense and list them for you right up front. So these are 3 principles which I want you to clearly remember at the end of this discussion, even if you don't remember anything else that we talk about, right? So without further ado, the 3 things that I want to talk about are learning with humility at all stages in your career, treating people right, irrespective of who they are, commitment to quality, or an unflinching zest for excellence in whatever you do. So let us start with the first one, right? Learning with humility at all stages in your career. Once you complete your MBA, once you enter your first job, you are going to be surrounded by a lot of different people. Some of them may be MBAs, some of them may be PhDs, some of them may be more educated than you. But there are going to be a lot of people who are much less educated than you, especially people with significant levels of experience. They may be at your level, above your level, or below your level. But irrespective of that, there is something that everyone brings to the table. And I am saying this based on my own career, having spanned a couple of decades and having interacted with hundreds or if not thousands of people. Everybody knows something better than you. Everybody can do something better than you. And if you have the humility, and the concept of humility is very closely associated with the concept of learning, because humility is what makes it possible for you to ask questions. And sometimes people confuse between humility and confidence, right? People confuse humility with lack of confidence. But it is perfectly possible to be absolutely humble and to be absolutely confident at the same time. Actually, I think it is easier for a humble person to be truly confident because a humble person understands what he can do and what he cannot do. And that is what confidence is all about. Understanding your strengths and weaknesses and making sure you execute strongly. I want to cement this whole concept of humility and learning, especially learning, with a particular example that Mr. Raman Roy, one of the pioneers of or captains of the Indian BPO industry, quoted in one of his TED Talks. If you don't know Raman Roy, he is an iconic figure of Indian business process outsourcing and BPM industry. He has started several BPO firms, sold them, as well as been at the helm of large BPO entities, a true stalwart of Indian IT-enabled services industry. So one of the first BPOs that Raman was heading apparently used a large, complex, multifunction printer manufactured by Xerox. The entire process was dependent on the printouts and some other functions that this printer presented. And on one fine day, this printer decided to stop working, and the entire operations came to a screeching halt. So everyone was worried, right? So you have a team of 200, 250 people sitting without knowing what to do just because this large printer is not functioning anymore. The Xerox technical support was called in, and the technical person came, the service person came, and he looked at this machine and looked at it in a puzzled way, scratched his head, and he said, okay, I have seen this machine in an industry exhibition. So Raman asks him, really concerned, so you think you can fix it? And he says, I have no idea how to fix it. I have never worked on one before. I have just seen it. So everybody is really worried, right? Productivity is tanking. Clients are probably going to shout at them. So people are really worried about the whole situation. And one of the young engineers sitting in one remote corner raises his hands timidly and says, maybe we can put a computer between rest of the network and this printer so that we can take the image, scan the image instead of printing it out. So some of the more senior managers ridicule him, saying, hey, we have the most senior, most and brightest mind looking at this problem, and you think as a fresher you can make a difference? You have a better solution than us? And Raman, being the humble manager he is, intervenes and says, let's give it a shot. We don't have a better option right now, right? What are our alternatives? So they work together on this solution, and behold, 4 hours later, they have a working solution. They have totally cut out the printer now, and they have the images coming to a computer. And if any of you are familiar with operations, probably many of you are not, a paper introduces certain wastages into a process, right? Paper makes it more difficult to process. It increases the turnaround times. Typically, turnaround time is basically the time from the first step in the process to the last step in the process, the initiation to completion time frame. That is called turnaround time, TAT for short, right? So paper introduces lots of complexities into the process. So now that they have as image-based solution, not only are they cutting out the cost of a printer, cost of paper, cost of cartridges and all that, they also figured out they could significantly reduce the turnaround time by around 4 days. So reduce cost, better quality, shorter processing time frame, all because the CEO had the humility to willingly listen and give an opportunity to the idea presented by the youngest, most novice of employees. And that takes humility, my friends. It is not easy to listen to somebody 5 levels below you. And that is what creates stalwarts like Raman Roy. Second, the second point that we wanted to discuss, being fair and treating people right, whoever they are. This is as much of a life lesson as it is a business lesson. Treating people right determines the difference between long-term relationships and short-term relationships. That makes the difference between people who aspire to be leaders and people who are truly leaders. Treating right creates customers who come back to you for business again and again. It creates lifetime customers and lifetime relationships. Treating people right creates team members and colleagues who are willing to work for you and willing to put their bodies in the line of fire for you. One of the most glowing examples in regarding this principle probably comes from the Indian Army. Armies, Indian as well as many of the other armies in the world, have a very peculiar leadership philosophy, which may be different from many of the corporates. And I really like that, right? I would actually read, many of you may not remember, this is from year 2008. There was a terrorist attack in Mumbai where several iconic buildings in South Mumbai were attacked by a group of terrorists from Pakistan. So I'm going to talk about one of that particular incident, Major Sandeep Unikrishnan, who I believe is from Ottapalam in Palakkad. He is definitely a Malayali, right? So one of the buildings that was taken up by the terrorists and where a number of hostages was kept was the 100-year-old Taj Mahal Palace Hotel. Major Sandeep Unikrishnan was a commander of 51 Special Actions Group, 51 SAG for short, deployed in the operation at the hotel to rescue the hostages. He entered the hotel with a group of 10 commandos. They came to a room which was locked from inside. After breaking open the door, a round of fire ensued, and Commando Sunil Kumar Yadav was hit on both legs. Major Sandeep was engaged the perpetrators in a firefight, arranged for Yadav's evacuation, and chased the terrorists alone to another floor in the hotel. In the encounter that followed, he was shot from the back and later succumbed to injuries. His last words were, "Do not come up, I will handle them according to the NSD officials." Where do people like that come from? What Major Sandeep did on that day was the epitome of selflessness. The likes of the late Major are a product of a leadership philosophy which recognizes people who are willing to sacrifice themselves for the welfare of others. What you see in reality, however, are mostly people who are willing to sacrifice others for their own selfless gains. And that is precisely why, my friends, we have a lack of good leadership in our communities and societies around the world. Leaders like that, leaders like Mr. Unikrishnan, inspire loyalty. They who make sacrifices for others inspire others to make sacrifices for the team and for the company. They, my friends, create great companies and high performing teams. They are the true leaders. To excellence and quality in everything that you do. If you look at it in a sense critically, this concept of commitment to quality related to treating people right. That is the second point that we were discussing just before. How do you treat a customer right? Deliver to the customer and make their life a tad easy, right? That is how you, I mean, we don't get to show heroism like the way Sandeep Unnikrishnan did, but we can job also related to learning quality of the work that you do. It may be the email that you send, right? How do you send it with the correct grammar? How do you send it in the most readable fashion? How do you address those emails in a way that is most understandable to others? It is very easy to like write cryptic emails, but it takes time and energy to write a good email. So you will appreciate more of this as you kind of get more and more into your careers as well. I receive hundreds of emails every day, even in my past role, and a well-written email is such a relief. You would be really surprised how few people write very good emails. So I really want to talk about two examples when it comes to commitment to quality. We don't need to go much further. It is basically two large Indian firms that I would like to quote as examples for commitment to quality. I'm talking about none other than the Tatas and Wipro, both of which I have had the good fortune to work for or very closely associated with as they were vendors. Tata was a vendor to me in my last job. And if you look at the beginnings of these two businesses, they had very similar origins. Both of them were family businesses from an industrial context, which started as small industries. And the fields and or the business sectors of business that they decided to operate in many times have gone through major transitions and hiccups, right? So they have moved from one sector of business to the other, and they have done that very successfully. Right? There is some core principle or some learnings that they have taken from sector to sector. If you look at it, Wipro started as Western India vegetable products. They used to manufacture soaps and oils, right? If many of you don't know, they still manufacture, I forget the names of the soap. I think it is probably Santur. And so they started as a vegetable based industrial manufacturing unit. They came to life. They came to medical equipments. They came to software, which they were extremely successful in. And I'm sure the saga will continue. But if you really look at what made them successful, irrespective of the fields of business which they decided to compete on, was this commitment to quality. So we talked about three principles today, and I assure you that I will wind up the monologue fairly quickly, right? So the three principles we talked about were learning with humility at all stages in your career, treating people right, irrespective of who they are, irrespective of whether they are senior to you, junior to you, same level as you, right? And commitment to quality and delivery excellence. So I hope as each of you enter your individual careers with great hope and aspirations, you will remember these three principles that we spoke about today. My objective here is not to give you a capsule of success or promise that your career success will be guaranteed if you follow this formula. However, I can assure you this much. If you choose to ignore any of these principles, if you choose to ignore learning, if you choose to mistreat the people around you, if you choose to compromise or not pay attention to quality, any of them in itself can definitely undermine your chances of success in your careers. I hope you will take these to heart and practice them and be very successful in all your careers and make Giridipam proud. Thank you.